Welcome, everybody. Hope you enjoyed your coffee. I certainly did. The day started early and with some very heavy subjects, and to be honest, to me, very tough to understand, since I'm a designer. So let's end the day with a bit of a lighter topic, and I would like to bring to you this design and development synergy, and how it has influenced our world, my world of design, when interacting with developers. I assume a lot of you in the room are. So let's get started. The digital product design landscape at TomTom has a lot to do with map data. And as a designer in TomTom, we basically bring that data, things that developers are constantly working with, the SDKs, the APIs, we bring that into the visual and the interaction to the end user. So our day-to-day experiences in TomTom is basically, as a designer, involves a lot of aspects of how to visualize this information. But you might be wondering, TomTom, are they still around? So for those that live in Europe for a long time, back in the 90s, or I would say early 2000s, TomTom was really big because they developed, invented a little device that we would have inside our cars. I'm originally from Brazil, so I didn't really get to know TomTom as a brand like this. But of course, things have changed since smartphones became a thing. But that meant the company just had to evolve, and they're always moving towards the future of mobility. So it started off with the sat-nav, and it evolved into the real traffic data that they started collecting. In 2009, we had the first sub-500 device in car, embedded navigation solutions, and in 2011, we had traffic indexes introduced. Moving forward in 2015, we launched HD maps that helps us with automated driving, really on the forefront of how we are doing driving these days. In 2018, that's where it's interesting for you guys. That's where the SDKs and APIs came in. And we started making it that anybody could develop with this map data. In 2021 is where it became interesting to me, because we introduced the TomTom Digital Cockpit, which is the in-car experience that I'm going to show you more about. And we are very proud at TomTom that last year we launched the Orbis Maps, which revolutionizes the idea how we bring proprietary data and open source data into the map industry. So TomTom is about navigation maps, HD maps, and maps for assisted driving technology. It is also about the real-life traffic and live service data, and a lot to do with EV services as well. And these are all interesting aspects for you to know, because it's where then a designer at TomTom will start having the challenges in how to make this visual in an interface. The navigation SDK is basically bringing all the data together for you to use in your different applications. And the digital cockpit, the in-vehicle experiences. Moreover, we collaborate with a lot of brands that are very known around the world, and that's how TomTom managed to keep itself relevant for the past 30 years. In the end, as industry evolves in any sector that you're in, the partnerships will enable you to continue being relevant in this world. So I would like you to take on a ride, since we're talking about maps. And in this ride, it's going to be in Amsterdam, where I currently live. So I'll take you through a little ride around the city center. But there are 3 things I would like you to take with you during this ride. Remember that the development terminology is useful to your designer colleague. We basically need to speak the same language, so don't be afraid to share with your designer colleague terms, words, and overall processes that you are constantly working with. Second thing I would like you to take away from this talk is design systems should really be called dev-design systems. It's not fair to have such an important aspect of digital product development being called only design, since it really involves the developer and the designers in the team. And finally, if you want to get stakeholder buy-in for whatever you're working with, you can get that more easily if you have a lot of visual examples. And that's where your designer colleague can really help you with getting your ideas across to the people that will actually have the money to afford your ideas. So let me show you the designer's role. And that is a big spectrum. It ranges from moving pixels. You probably came across one of your colleagues like spending hours deciding if it's one pixel up or one pixel below. It moves from that to actually problem solving, right? We have to come up with ideas and interactions from the issues that we want to solve. And that involves a lot of design thinking. So design thinking is a very interesting methodology that was brought by Tim Brown. Well, he didn't really invent it. They made it more popular. And it's really this triad that we have to constantly keep in mind as designers. And ideally, anybody in the company actually should have that in mind. You need to consider the user desirability for what you're producing, the business viability, and the technology feasibility. So you need to talk to your business owners and the people with the money, like what is it that you can invest on? You need to talk to the developers to know about the technology and the issues that you might encounter with that solution. And ultimately, you need to have the user in the center of what you're doing. And at TomTom, we take this role as a designer with the mindset of a design thinking, and we mostly work with these principles in mind. So this is all the background and the theory behind the day-to-day tasks that I will walk you through as well. So we designed for driving. That's very relevant in our specific industry, because actually we don't want our end users to be distracted. So the less information on the screen, the better, because they need to really be focusing on the road. And that is the most important principle whenever we are coming up with solutions to representing that data. We also aim for lovable experiences. In the end, for any product, digital product that you're working on, the end user needs to love that, so that it becomes enjoyable to interact with your product. And that goes also for the fluidness of the interface. Things need to interact with each other seamlessly. And you can imagine, in a very complex product with many steps, you have different designers working together, different product teams developing those things in parallel. And so things really need to communicate to each other and fluid nicely. So that is also one of the principles in the back of our mind. And we try to balance the consistency and the adaptability of our interfaces. And that's where design systems is really important. But why do I care about this synergy? A little bit background about myself. I graduated in product design in 2012, and I've done from all things like designing a chair to actually a product made of plastic. I don't quite remember what it was, but very interesting course where you get to see a little bit of industrial design in practice. But the web kind of always drew me in. And I'm lucky and glad to be in the tech industry, because it does give the opportunity to actually go beyond, especially with AI and the way things are evolving now. And I care about that. In 2019, I was lucky to join a design systems team. So I understood now this idea of technology and design really coming together and speaking the same language. Also, coming from Brazil, English is not my first language. I learned it as a second. So it kind of feels like computer languages and other languages are a fun thing to do for myself. And it's also what Zach is going to talk about later with the Finnish language. So all this is because I think design and development will really go hand in hand in the future. And in our previous talk, we could even see how new tools are being developed every day to make that transition even more come close together in the future. But ultimately, I think if there was a meme to represent me, it would be more or less this one. I feel like starting from a designer, and by no offense if you're a designer, I don't think any less of you, but working with design systems is kind of the ultimate one. So let me show you a little bit about the processes that we have inside TomTom. It's a combination of different methods and frameworks. So what I told you about the design thinking is like what we have in the mindset of our daily tasks. But really, it's interesting to see how we try to combine this with our daily activities of working in a team. And you probably come across this graph before, and where we have these phases of constant iteration. And a lot of keywords that developers are also familiar with, of course, being agile and a lean startup process to work with. So we do have that at TomTom as well. We have this phase in which it needs to be defined normally by the business owners or the product owners, where what is it that we want to achieve? We need to empathize with the user. And then there's a lot of ideation, a lot of attempts and tries. And the tools that we have today really allows us to get that very fast. And eventually, we hand it over to development, and we get to see that in the end product. So breaking it down a little bit further, if we were to think in a streamline how it would work, it's basically this. We have the problem to solve and outcome definition. So obviously, always start with why and don't waste too much time not knowing what the problem is because you're just not going to get the result that you want. And there's a lot of ideation, a lot of measuring the impact and learning from it. Eventually, we agree on the hypothesis and solutions, and it's ideally to have a developer involved in this process as well at all times because a lot of the technical issues can actually influence these decisions. And this is the continuous discovery phase that we are working with. We are validating these things with prototypes, and our design tools allow us for creating more or less prototypes that work, not perfectly, but it gets us at least to a good stage, to finally go to development and deliver. We don't want to waste too much time developing things that haven't been validated with end users, and that's where your designer colleague can be really useful to speed up the process and save on costs from development. And here are some of the tasks and activities that our designer colleagues at TomTom will go through. We iterate and collaborate to create these successful design solutions. We have some designers in our company called interaction designers, and they're the ones really focusing on the wireframing. Really, what am I button going to press to do A and B? And we don't worry too much about how the interface looks like at this point because we want that delightful and fluidness incorporated on the actions. From there, we get the visual designer to actually start putting it into the end results of our UI. So high fidelity and prototypes come from here. There is a lot of iteration between the two types of designers as well, because a lot of the times when you end up with a visual design of something that was mocked in a wireframe, it impacts some of the decisions from the wireframe. You might not have enough space because that button is bigger. So this is where that continuous discovery process also happens between ourselves. And that's where we have a lot of reviews and alignments to have this validation of, is this working? Do you agree? In the end, TomTom has about 60 designers, so that's a lot of people working in parallel and pretty much on the same product. And so we need to make sure that things are aligned. And finally, a lot of user research. So of these 60 designers, some of them are dedicated user researchers that they will define the problem and they will recruit testers to put these ideas into practice. And here we have a picture, actually, in an in-drive car. It's an interesting setup. They have about a tablet with our product, a phone with our application, cameras everywhere, and then we ask a person to drive from A to B and see how they interact with that interface. Very safely, of course. And with all this, we also need to do the handover. So the designers prepare all those files together, and I will tell you more about the tools later. And this handover is then that step of delivery, where the developer can then continue with the coding and putting the data now in an interface. And that's where the TomTom's design system comes in. It's in the handover process, and a lot in the visual design process as well. Because the TomTom design system is basically a tool set that enables both designers and developers achieve these end results, these end design results quicker. It's the foundation. So if you're not familiar with design systems yet, and let me call it dev design systems, because I think I'm going to cone that. It is a tool set that is composed of libraries, documentation and guidelines. You really need those. The coded components, obviously, that should match these libraries that normally are design assets. And in our case, our design system is also a white label solution, and we also provide customization tools with it. So more on the white label. This idea of white label is basically the fact that TomTom is selling a product for other companies and not for end users. So even though our designers are thinking about people like you and me driving in a car, TomTom's actual clients are the car makers that are going to implement that product in their dashboard. And so the design system needs to be one that can be easily customizable. So if you think at it, it's like one template, but many ways to fill it in. And you have there an example of a button, the classic design system example. And ideally, we should be able to achieve all these different results without having to touch code, hopefully. So the components can be personalized to a certain degree. There are some things that cannot really be done, even though the client wants it. But those limitations shouldn't stop for quicker time to market when implementing our product. And that's, those customizations are possible because of these points of customizations. So they are properties that enable the style flexibility while the component maintains its core functionality. You might have seen these elements also being called design tokens. And that's actually something that in the design system industry is coming up more and more, because we are now adding this layer of abstraction in how we design and code to think in a way that it should all be solved with these exchangeable strings, let's put it this way. So all these little points should reference a specific style that could be swapped for anything else. And in our design system at TomTom, we have a token structure to set that up. We actually separate it in 3 layers. We have the global layer, the system layer, and the component layer. So the abstraction itself of the UI can be defined in tokens, and they can just be random or words that describe exactly what you're seeing on the screen. But we actually make it that you can have these layers of abstraction to achieve different results in more comprehensive way. So that actually we don't want to allow anybody to just decide that a button is blue, but the switch is pink because they wanted to. There should be a system in place also for the harmony and the consistency of the user interface. And basically these tokens reference the colors, the fonts, the sizes, spacings, the shadows. Moreover, what you get to see, and this is a screenshot of our asset that designers get access to. Basically, it's more or less the design tokens that we have documented, because they are now accessible through a feature in our tool. The feature is called variables inside Figma. And here, the designers can have a look at what we want or what our system has available to them. But they don't really have to think much about this, because once the design system is set up, then they can just move forward with putting together the screens that they need. We also provide all the resources. So in our case, our design system is for Android specific, since the automotive industry works on Android. Which is a shame for me. I have a lot more experience with web in my past in the past companies that I worked at. So the Android brings an extra level of complexity when thinking about design systems, but nevertheless really interesting to work with. And we also provide templates for navigation. So we go beyond just giving the basic switches and buttons and inputs. We actually provide templates for designers to put together these screens much quicker. And here's a screenshot of some of these components documented. This file, in essence, again, the designer, my designer colleagues are not really gonna look through it much unless they really wanna know more details about the design system, but they get as a resource when they are implementing their final designs. And here, an example of our template. Moreover, we also provide in our design system a reference UI. So these are ready designs, or very, what we call hero shots of some of our interface screens to kickstart any step of future features that we are putting together in our applications. So our designers get to have a starting point, and these are some of the examples of the designs that we have. And basically, they need to extend these steps or define even more details for the handover process with development for the prototype. So it's handy from a design system perspective to just give them ready guides. And also for them to be familiar of what are other consistencies that they should maintain in terms of interaction, positioning, layouting. In the end, there is a lot that the design system cannot do for the designer. They still need to put things together on a screen on their own. They need to know the spacing between things. So having ready designs helps them maintaining that consistency. And what's more interesting about working with design systems in a challenge like the one at TomTom is the fact that we are working with different screen sizes all the time. We actually don't know how big or how small the screens in our clients' cars will be. So we take responsiveness to the next level when thinking about this design system at TomTom. Let me show you some of the tools that we have. Figma, you're probably very familiar with, I hope. And for those who are not too familiar with Figma, this could be interesting for the next time you're going to be talking with your colleague. Oh yes, I have to carry this out to the next. 1 second. If I go here, yeah. Because it's not mirroring my screen, it's just, there you go. Oh, no, this also works. Yeah, perfect. Cool. So this is the Figma interface. And like the tool that we just saw in the previous talk, very familiar in a lot of aspects, right? And somebody even had on the Q&A a question like, is Toddle supposed to replace Figma? It's an interesting one, also from my perspective, to find out, because it feels like, as a designer, every 2 or 3 years, we're having to learn about a new tool and get used to it, and yeah, basically get to interact with different solutions that the industry brings to us. So just to zoom in, for you to be familiar, and I think this is a good thing to share to anybody that needs to work with a designer, look at their tools. Try to familiarize yourself as well, because they're going to give you files that live in this kind of tool. And at least if you know their terminology and what they work with on a daily basis, it might give you some empathy on also how to interpret their designs. So we have, for example, these panels. From a design system perspective, they will basically use these assets tab to drag and drop anything that they need for their designs, for example. Right, so we get these little elements that we start to put together on the screen. We also have on the right panel the more details about the style aspect of these elements that we're working with. We get a prototype tab. So just for you to have an idea of what is it that we're working with every day. Figma is essential for the work that we do at TomTom. We moved previously from working on Sketch, yet another platform. But I guess what is nice about Figma is indeed the collaboration aspect. So that one, with a team of 60 designers, it becomes crucial that you should be able to comment, that you should be able to even drag things around if you have a different opinion or a suggestion on how a design should go. And we also have for TomTom a thing called Map Maker. So not only working with the UI of interacting with maps, we also need the map itself, the data, for those designs, for true representation of the product that we're working with. And this collaboration with development meant we can now bring this map to inside Figma in a much quicker way. We would have before to rely on simple screenshots from a destination and try to work on top of that. But now we have a plugin that actually brings that directly into Figma. And I would like to show you a quick video of Map Maker and all its capabilities. So this is the idea. Not only we want to bring the maps inside Figma, we also want to enable our clients to customize the map to full extent of their brand, with a lot of features, using their own style. They can define some they can start from some ready maps and with some selected types of data. They also get to choose their own colors in this interface. And they get to customize their icons for point of interest or anything that is inside a map in a very straightforward way through this website. We can also add 3D landmarks, and this is all the data that is now provided by TomTom. And so we also get to style it in more detail through code on this map. And I guess this is the bit where the AI meets design. It's not a feature that is quite there yet, unfortunately, but definitely where we want to go with AI, that it would assist us to define those colors. In this example, it was like, give me a winter-looking map, for example. And here's where we brought this to Figma because of the plugin. All in all, to be able to achieve, or to be able to bring maps inside the tools that designers work with, and also to enable our clients to get these maps to their style. So the design system teams that I work with at TomTom has some responsibilities. We basically provide this full package. What I showed you on the assets, these are the Figma libraries. And we also provide the coded components for the developer colleagues to put together the product. We also have to have the guideline and documentation. But because we are a white label, we provide support as well, both for internal alignment and external clients when they are in the phase of implementation. And like MapMaker, we are constantly looking for tools and ways to bring together the two worlds. We also found more recently a way to extract those design token values in a JSON format and directly input that into code. So the handover process being even quicker. Not so much having to say, hey, this primary color changed from blue to red, but actually I can do that in Figma and just send it over in a file through GitHub. It's basically the toolbox for internal and externals to work with our products. And in the end, this is what we want to achieve. We want a screen design like this that TomTom provides out of the box to be adapted to look completely different in any case, alongside with its maps and all the experience, so that an adoption of a navigation application can be done seamlessly with our clients in any screen size. And it's really all possible because of the design system. That's why I'm very proud of it. Of course, our designer colleagues working in all these beautiful experiences have all the credit to be taken, but it is because of our little components and design tokens that we give to them that they can achieve it so quickly and easily. And this is the point where I like to make about being visual, right? You're now able to see that what the design system is capable of because of these screenshots. So make sure to enable that. If you want stakeholder buy-in, include that in your presentations and in your workflow. So as we are arriving at our destination, and this is called New Market, a very cool location in Amsterdam Center, close to Chinatown. Here's what I would like to share with you. Design and development have some common terminology. I put here together a word cloud that I thought, yeah, it's relevant. These are words that I use every day. Accessibility, and I'm sure you have to think about that as well. Component, I mentioned a couple of times, but actually, I might even refer to component something different than you might think as a developer. To you, maybe a component is actually a full block. To me, it's really just a button. There's specification, something that we provide from design perspective. We need to, in the handover process, give you a file with all those details. Where goes what, and what do we want to achieve through this? Tokens. You might have used, I think tokens comes from development. Yeah, and now we adopt it. Now we have a thing called design tokens. It's our word now. We have review, variables, release, architecture, scalability. All these things are common terminology in our day-to-day work as well. And I guess it's because we are now working so close together to achieve digital product designs that it makes sense. We all speak the same language. And in a product-led and customer-focused world, we need this diverse, collaborative, and cross-functional teams, right? The business, the right thing to build, and the building it right, as well as building it fast, that sweet spot in the middle is what you want, no matter what product you're working with. And so having similar terminology, understanding each other, having empathy for each other's discipline is very relevant. So get to know your designer. You know, share your processes, your terminologies, and your workflow. They are very interested in what you do as well, I'm sure. So I hope that with this glimpse on how TomTom works and what we have inside our design team gives you some inspiration, and maybe even if you need to work with map data in the near future, that you think about TomTom. Thank you. And if you want to get in touch, don't hesitate.